And Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the Virtual House Church. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and I'm excited to be joined by my friends John and John from Now You See TV. Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing good, man. We're excited about this. I know you got a conference coming up tomorrow. That's really exciting, too, man. I wish I could be there. Well, I know we wanted to be, but it's a little long from Indiana, so we couldn't make it.
Yeah, that's the Back to the Future conference. The theme is Decoding Deception, and I'm going to be there with Doug Hamp and John Gabrielson. Actually, Doug Hamp's not going to physically be there. He'll be piping in through Google Hangouts, I believe, for this one.
Interesting. Yeah, a friend of mine is going to show. Well, he's not a friend of mine. I'm going to have him on the show, but he wrote a book called Leviathan Ruse, and he will be there. His name's Alex, so I told him to say what's up to you while he's there. And I just got the book in the mail, but it looks really interesting, so I want to check him out. But
cool.
On the show soon. But.
Yeah, you guys have had some really great guests on lately. I need to get caught up on your shows, maybe watch them on my long drive to Austin or something. Well, we're excited to have another Virtual House Church tonight. I'm going to have to probably cut it a little bit short tonight, maybe by about an hour and 45 minutes I think we can go tonight. Do you have any administrative stuff you need to get out of the way first before we get started?
Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit here, but yeah, go to, if you're on the YouTube and you want to ask questions or want to do anything, Rob's going to get out early, but we'll still do questions and answers till he leaves. But if you go to nowyousctv.org, follow the Virtual House Church link, or if you're on YouTube, in the description, you can click on there, go there, and there's a live chat right there where we'll be fielding questions. It's also a moderated chat, and so you'll have moderation on there. You don't have to worry about some trolls or anything like that. So come on over, fellowship with us, and have a good time. Those are the rules.
Those are the rules. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to do a screen share here, and we'll go ahead and get started. If you just go to virtualhousechurch.com, if you want to follow along, just go to virtualhousechurch.com. In the left-hand menu where it says Weekly Bible Study, scroll down to where it says Deuteronomy Week 48. That's our study page for this evening. It's called Shoftim. We'll be covering Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 18 through chapter 21, verse 9, and the prophets Isaiah 51:12 through 52:12, and these are all the New Testament readings right here. I'm not going to go through each one of them. You can see it right there on the screen. And if you scroll down, you'll see some of the notes from the last study that we did, which was in 2013. I think it was the last time I did a Deuteronomy study on the Virtual House Church. There are some links right here for you to check out. Some really great commentary by an individual named Ardell from yourlivingwaters.com. This person did a 2008 and 2009 commentary. If you just click on those, it takes you to a PDF of the study. Really good stuff to check out there. The usual questions in the workbook. This is the audio player right here for the 2000, I should say 13, I'm going to change that, 2013 broadcast, which was apparently right after I had surgery. You can see the picture there where I was pretty jacked up, man. I had to have one of my wisdom teeth taken out, but there was like a cyst that had developed. It was impacted, and there's a cyst that had developed and was basically eating up my jaw. I had like a tiny little sliver of bone left holding my jaw to my face, so I had to go through quite an extensive surgery back then. And I believe in the 2013 broadcast, because I was pretty jacked up, played a commentary from truth2you.org, but since then they've gone off the rails and now believe stuff that I frankly can't believe that they believe, and so I no longer endorse them. As I recall, the commentary was probably pretty good back in 2013, but since then I can no longer put my stamp of approval or endorsement on that ministry, but you're certainly welcome to check out the audio and stuff that we did there anyway. So these are just a few of the notes from the last time we did this, 2013. Tonight we're going to go ahead and use Steve Mutrio's website, torahfamily.org. Certainly, if you can, support his ministry. He's doing a great work there, and he's done a great work for us in providing all the audio so we don't have to do it ourselves, and we don't have to read it. So let's just go ahead and jump right into the Torah portion from Deuteronomy, beginning in chapter 16, verse 18.
You shall appoint judges and officers in all your towns that the Lord your God is giving you, according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show partiality, and you shall not accept a bribe, For a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and subverts the cause of the righteous. Justice and only justice you shall follow, that you may live and inherit the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not plant any tree as an Asherah beside the altar of the Lord your God that you shall make. And you shall not set up a pillar which the Lord your God hates. You shall not sacrifice to the Lord your God an ox or a sheep in which is a blemish, any defect whatever, for that is an abomination to the Lord your God. If there is found among you within any of your towns that the Lord your God is giving you, a man or woman who does what is evil in the sight of the Lord your God, in transgressing his covenant, and has gone and served other gods and worshipped them, or the sun, or the moon, or any of the host of heaven, which I have forbidden, and it is told you, and you hear of it, then you shall inquire diligently, and if it is true and certain that such an abomination has been done in Israel, then you shall bring out to your gates that man or woman who has done this evil thing, and you shall stone that man or woman to death with stones. On the evidence of 2 witnesses, or of 3 witnesses, the one who is to die shall be put to death. A person shall not be put to death on the evidence of 1 witness. The hand of the witnesses shall be first against him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. If any case arises requiring decision between one kind of homicide and another, one kind of legal right and another, or one kind of assault and another, any case within your towns that is too difficult for you, then you shall arise and go up to the place that the Lord your God will choose. And you shall come to the Levitical priests and to the judge who is in office in those days, and you shall consult them, and they shall declare to you the decision. Then you shall do according to what they declare to you from that place that the Lord will choose, and you shall be careful to do according to all that they direct you, according to the instructions that they give you, and according to the decision which they pronounce to you, you shall do. You shall not turn aside from the verdict that they declare to you, either to the right hand or to the left. The man who acts presumptuously by not obeying the priest who stands to minister there before the Lord your God, or the judge, that man shall die. So you shall purge the evil from Israel. And all the people shall hear and fear, and not act presumptuously again. When you come to the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you possess it and dwell in it, and then say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me, you may indeed set a king over you whom the Lord your God will choose. One from among your brothers you shall set as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you who is not your brother. Only he must not acquire many horses for himself, or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses, since the Lord has said to you, you shall never return that way again. And he shall not acquire many wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he acquire for himself excessive silver and gold. And when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself in a book a copy of this law, approved by the Levitical priests. And it shall be with him, and he shall read in it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God by keeping all the words of this law and these statutes and doing them, that his heart may not be lifted up above his brothers, and that he may not turn aside from the commandment, either to the right hand or to the left, so that he may continue long in his kingdom, he and his children in Israel. The Levitical priests, all the tribe of Levi, shall have no portion or inheritance with Israel. They shall eat the Lord's food offerings as their inheritance. They shall have no inheritance among their brothers. The Lord is their inheritance as he promised them. And this shall be the priest's due from the people, from those offering a sacrifice, whether an ox or a sheep. They shall give to the priest the shoulder and the 2 cheeks and the stomach. The firstfruits of your grain, of your wine, and of your oil, and the first fleece of your sheep you shall give him. For the Lord your God has chosen him out of all your tribes to stand and minister in the name of the Lord, him and his sons for all time. And if a Levite comes from any of your towns out of all Israel, where he lives, and he may come when he desires, to the place that the Lord will choose, and ministers in the name of the Lord his God, like all his fellow Levites who stand to minister there before the Lord, Then he may have equal portions to eat, besides what he receives from the sale of his patrimony. When you come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abominable practices of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering, anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes, or interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or a medium, or a necromancer, or one who inquires of the dead. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord your God is driving them out before you. You shall be blameless before the Lord your God, for these nations which you are about to dispossess listen to fortune-tellers and to diviners. But as for you, the Lord your God has not allowed you to do this. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your brothers. It is to him you shall listen, just as you desired of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, when you said, Let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, or see this great fire any more, lest I die. And the Lord said to me, They are right in what they have spoken. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers. And I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. And whoever will not listen to my words that he shall speak in my name, I myself will require it of him. But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name that I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that same prophet shall die. And if you say in your heart, How may we know the word that the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the word does not come to pass or come true, that is a word that the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You need not be afraid of him. When the Lord your God cuts off the nations whose land the Lord your God is giving you, and you dispossess them and dwell in their cities and in their houses, you shall set apart 3 cities for yourselves in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. You shall measure the distances and divide into 3 parts the area of the land that the Lord your God gives you as a possession, so that any manslayer can flee to them. This is the provision for the manslayer, who by fleeing there may save his life. If anyone kills his neighbor unintentionally without having hated him in the past, as when someone goes into the forest with his neighbor to cut wood, and his hand swings the axe to cut down a tree, and the head slips from the handle and strikes his neighbor so that he dies, he may flee to one of these cities and live, lest the avenger of blood in hot anger pursue the manslayer and overtake him, because the way is long, and strike him fatally, though the man did not deserve to die, since he had not hated his neighbor in the past. Therefore I command you, you shall set apart 3 cities. And if the Lord your God enlarges your territory, as he has sworn to your fathers, and gives you all the land that he promised to give to your fathers, provided you are careful to keep all this commandment, which I command you today, by loving the Lord your God and by walking ever in his ways, then you shall add 3 other cities to these 3, lest innocent blood be shed in your land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance, and so the guilt of bloodshed be upon you. But if anyone hates his neighbor and lies in wait for him and attacks him and strikes him fatally so that he dies, and he flees into one of these cities, then the elders of his city shall send and take him from there and hand him over to the avenger of blood so that he may die. Your eye shall not pity him, but you shall purge the guilt of innocent blood from Israel, so that it may be well with you. You shall not move your neighbor's landmark which the men of old have set, in the inheritance that you will hold in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. A single witness shall not suffice against a person for any crime or for any wrong in connection with any offense that he has committed. Only on the evidence of 2 witnesses or of 3 witnesses shall a charge be established. If a malicious witness arises to accuse a person of wrongdoing, then both parties to the dispute shall appear before the Lord, before the priests and the judges who are in office in those days. The judges shall inquire diligently, and if the witness is a false witness and has accused his brother falsely, then you shall do to him as he had meant to do to his brother. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and the rest shall hear and fear, and shall never again commit any such evil among you. Your eye shall not pity, It shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. When you go out to war against your enemies and see horses and chariots and an army larger than your own, you shall not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And when you draw near to the battle, the priest shall come forward and speak to the people, and shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are drawing near for battle against your enemies. Let not your heart faint. Do not fear or panic or be in dread of them, for the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to give you the victory. Then the officers shall speak to the people, saying, Is there any man who has built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him go back to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man dedicate it. And is there any man who has planted a vineyard and has not enjoyed its fruit? Let him go back to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man enjoy its fruit. And is there any man who has betrothed a wife and has not taken her? Let him go back to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man take her. And the officers shall speak further to the people and say, Is there any man who is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go back to his house, lest he make the heart of his fellows melt like his own. And when the officers have finished speaking to the people, then commanders shall be appointed at the head of the people. When you draw near to a city to fight against it, offer terms of peace to it. And if it responds to you peaceably and it opens to you, then all the people who are found in it shall do forced labor for you and shall serve you. But if it makes no peace with you, but makes war against you, then you shall besiege it. And when the Lord your God gives it into your hand, you shall put all its males to the sword, but the women and the little ones, the livestock and everything else in the city, all its spoil, you shall take as plunder for yourselves. And you shall enjoy the spoil of your enemies which the Lord your God has given you. Thus you shall do to all the cities that are very far from you, which are not cities of the nations here. But in the cities of these peoples, that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance, you shall save alive nothing that breathes. But you shall devote them to complete destruction, the Hittites and the Amorites, the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded, that they may not teach you to do according to all their abominable practices that they have done for their gods, and so you sin against the Lord your God. When you besiege a city for a long time, making war against it in order to take it, you shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them. You may eat from them, but you shall not cut them down. Are the trees in the field human, that they should be besieged by you? Only the trees that you know are not trees for food you may destroy and cut down, that you may build siege works against the city that makes war with you, until it falls. If in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess someone is found slain, lying in the open country, and it is not known who killed him, then your elders and your judges shall come out, and they shall measure the distance to the surrounding cities. And the elders of the city that is nearest to the slain man shall take a heifer that has never been worked and that is not pulled in a yoke. And the elders of that city shall bring the heifer down to a valley with running water, which is neither plowed nor sown, and shall break the heifer's neck there in the valley. Then the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come forward, for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister to him, and to bless in the name of the Lord, and by their word every dispute and every assault shall be settled. And all the elders of that city nearest to the slain man shall wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the valley, and they shall testify, Our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it shed. Accept atonement, O Lord, for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, and do not set the guilt of innocent blood in the midst of your people Israel, so that their blood guilt be atoned for. So you shall purge the guilt of innocent blood from your midst, when you do what is right in the sight of the Lord.
All right. That concludes our Torah portion. Let me go ahead and end the screen share here. All right. Well, any thoughts? Any questions? Let's hear from you guys and from the audience.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat, and I think that we covered a lot of this on the first episode that we did with this virtual house church on here on IEC TV, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it to you that way if there's any new people, because I sent out a live thing on Facebook for people that are interested so they can come. So there's going to be a lot of people that aren't used to Torah and they don't follow Torah. So we'll go ahead and ask this. But I think we should talk about the portion a little bit after this question, but I think it's
sure.
Ask it. So Amanda says, I'm getting confused. How can we follow Torah if it's telling us to stone people? Does that not contradict the law? There must have been a bad bunch if they were doing all those horrible things.
That question was actually answered in the Torah portion, beginning in chapter 19, verse 15. First of all, you have to have at least 2 witnesses. You can't just accuse somebody of doing something. You have to have witnesses, and they had a judicial system. It says in chapter 19, verse 17, then both the men between whom the controversy is shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges, which shall be in those days. So they had a judicial system that you had to run it through the same way we do. I mean, we have the same type of structure where, if somebody's caught doing something wrong, they're arrested by the police, brought into court, and, have witnesses, and you have an attorney and the whole deal. So there's really not much of a difference between the way our judicial system is supposed to work and the way the judicial system is set up here in the scriptures. It's not about vigilantism. It's not about, hey, this guy ticked me off, so let's go out and stone him. I don't know if that answers the question, but as I understand the question that was put forward, that seems to have answered itself in chapter 19.
I think you're right. I mean, it was a theocracy. First off, it was underneath God's law. The whole country was set up that way. I mean, you're right. I mean, if you kill somebody here in America, in most states, you're going to get the death penalty or something along those lines too. So I mean, it's not. Yeah, you're right. It's not vigilantism. It's not anything like that. Obviously, we're not the people that are in charge of executing this law. We're not going to. Me and Rob and John aren't going to go off and stone somebody because they took it. We're not qualified to do that. So I mean, that's where I think I understand where people are coming from on that, because when I first read the Torah, I was like, man, I should be going and tearing down the idols down at this local church down here, just completely kicking them over and stuff. And I still, don't get me wrong, but there's definitely a order. Like you said, there's judges. There had to be 2 witnesses, all that stuff. So.
Yeah. Speaking of what you just said there, tearing down stuff. If you look in chapter 16, verse 21, you shall not plant a grove of any trees near unto the altar. It's basically talking about Asherah poles, and I believe it's talking about obelisks and stuff like that, which, if you really wanted to be a stickler about it, all the steeples that you see on churches, no go. That's a no-go.
Yeah, and it'd be great. I mean, I know a lot of people are like, Torah law is so hard, but really, I mean, we have way more laws in the United States.
Oh yeah.
And maybe there's more driving laws than there are in the Torah. So. Yeah,
and also the issue of green trees. Let me see. This is, what does he use? The RSV or ESV? Steve?
I think he uses the ESV. That's what I'm
ESV. Because ESV says, you shall not plant any tree as an Asherah, which is a pole, beside the altar of the Lord. And King James says, not plant thee a grove of any trees. So I'd have to go and look at the actual words there that are being used in Hebrew. Rather interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, man. We were looking at a verse that talks about that. They go behind the trees and purify themselves to enter.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting verse right there.
Yeah, because in other places it talks about and under every green tree, and usually that's associated with the evergreen, or in other words, the Christmas tree. So when you're in a church that has a steeple on top and Christmas trees inside, it's all no go. That's totally against what we're reading here, and also what's in Deuteronomy chapter 12, and what is it? Jeremiah. I think it's Jeremiah 10, if I'm not mistaken. That's a Christmas tree. People try to deny it. They say, no, that's not what it is. It's an idol. I say, okay, read it again. It talks about going out, cutting a tree, bringing it in, and decking it with silver and gold. Okay, that's exactly what you do with a Christmas tree. You go out, cut it down, you set it up straight up and down, upright in your house, usually in your living room as a prominent display, and you deck it with silver and gold, and then you bow down before it to lay presents, and you bow down before it to receive presents. It's exactly what's being said. And I mean, it is idolatry. If somebody just outside that doesn't know and understand your traditions, let's say a Native American that has never met you before, you come over as the Pilgrims or whatever, and you're having a Christmas celebration, and they see you cut a tree, set it up, deck it with silver and gold, and bow down, put up the presents, they're gonna say, "Wow, they got a weird worship service going on there." It's idol. It's totally idolatry.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I had a guy on a while back, probably a year and a half ago. He was a ex-pagan. He was a witch in a certain order, a Celtic order of witches, and he said that on December, I think it's 23rd or 24th, they do it, but they have a Christmas tree, and I can't remember what the god's name is, but they light candles underneath it, and they are around it, and they do all these different things that, exactly like what we do in Christmas to this tree. So I mean, it's documented that they still continue that tradition to this day. I mean, and you're right. I mean, I think there's like a Christmas carol that talks about decking something in silver and gold, and if I remember right, but interesting. So.
Yeah, and deck the halls with balls of holly, la la la, and all that. I mean, when you look at all this, the wreath, all of the stuff that we do is all totally and thoroughly entrenched in paganism, and there's no such thing as Christianizing paganism. There's no biblical precedence for that whatsoever. So, just some things to consider.
In the Way documentary, there's a young lady who's a Hellenist, I guess a paganist, and man, she just goes into this is pagan, and she goes into the history. She actually goes into the history that we just stole it from them. I mean, goes into detail what Christmas is, all the Yules, I mean, it was fantastic the way she put it out there. I'm praying for that young lady right now. I mean, it's like, but wow, hearing it straight from their mouths was pretty wild.
Yeah, what is that website? Is it thewaydocumentary.com or something like that? Or thewayfilm.com? Do you guys know?
I remember, I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, see if we can look it up. We can put it in.
Theway.com.
Or The Way Movie. I just looked at that. No, that's not it. Oh, anyway, we'll see if we can find it. But that is a very good documentary.
Absolutely.
Thewaydoc.com.
It's The Way Doc.
Thewaydoc.com. Thewaydoc.com.
I'm just looking it up here. Okay, so I'll do a screen share.
Yeah, I haven't got to see it yet, but I've seen like a bunch of clips from it. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, here it is, thewaydoc.com. You can watch the trailer there, and I think, at least the way they had it before, yeah, you can either get the DVD or just do the download. We did the download and watched it at our home Bible study fellowship. It's really good. I recommend people watch it. And John Hall, you're right. Her testimony, that pagan, I don't know if she's a witch or what she was, but her whole thing was right on target regarding Christmas and Easter and all that. Oh, we just lost John.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. He must have lost his connection or something. But yeah, I can't wait to see it, man. I know you're in it. I think Rico Cortez is in it. Michael Rood's in it. Some other guy that he just added me on Facebook's in it. A couple is Steve Mutria, Zach Bauer. I mean, all kinds.
Yeah. Well, most of the guys that are out there talking about Torah have at least one appearance in the documentary. I mean, they really went out there and tried to find as many people as they could talk to. Both the sort of well-known personalities as well as, people that are less well-known that are just have come to Torah. But, I mean, I think it's a very good high-level view of what's going on. Why are people returning to the Torah? Why are people leaving the church in mass number, like an exodus right now? And in fact, there are a lot of, I'm hearing more and more of the mainstream sort of Christian, your regular Christian pastors, kind of freaking out about it because they're realizing this is really something big is going on here, and they think people are being deceived. They think people are being deceived, and they're leaving the church, and which is not the truth.
Yeah.
The people, and I wrote about this. Is it a cult or a massive move of God? First of all, any cult out there will have a cult leader. It has somebody who comes up with an idea, and hey, follow me, and people follow them, and they go off and do their own thing. There's no leader except the Holy Spirit in this movement. These are just people all over the world that one day wake up and realize, what's coming from the pulpit right now in my church, it just doesn't sound right. They're getting more and more uncomfortable with the Christmas and Easter stuff. Initially, I think a lot of it starts out because they think it's too commercialized, and that's what gives them a bad taste in their mouth. But then eventually they start doing their own research or see a YouTube video or something on it and realize, wow, this has nothing to do with my Savior, so why are we doing it? And so then they ask their pastor, well, why, was Jesus born on December 25th? And they'll say no. Well, then why are we celebrating his birthday on December 25th? Well, and they're just getting more and more upset with what's going on in mainstream Christianity that they're pulling out. And for like many, they flounder. They don't know what to do, where to go, until they finally just start from the beginning, go back to Genesis on their own, and a lot of times they'll start a home Bible fellowship, or they'll get hooked up with somebody else who's already doing that. And that's what's happening. And this I firmly believe it's a move of God, is happening all over the world. And I think this documentary does a good job of giving sort of a snapshot overview, like a high-level overview about why this is happening and what it is that is happening. So I highly recommend people check it out.
I saw the trailer, it gave me chills when I watched it. I was like, man, this is going to be great. And it's so cool to see that. You're right, man. People were by the groves. I know I just met up with somebody here locally in Evansville that just started following Torah, and she listens to our show. And then there's so many people just locally in Evansville. I mean, back when we started try to start a fellowship, there was like maybe 2 or 3 families, and now it's just like more and more and more and more and more people that are coming to this. It's just amazing. And
yeah, I'm gonna put something up on the screen again here. If I think we've shown this before, but if not, people can go to my website, robschannel.com, and I believe it's in the blog section. I probably need to make this a little easier for people to find, because you might have to scroll down a little bit to find it. But there's a link I called Torah Fellowships or something like that. And if you have trouble finding it on my website, they also have it on 119 Ministries website, which is pretty much where I got it from anyway. They had a plug-in on their website that shows where people are meeting. Here it is, Torah Fellowship Map. I'll put a link in the Virtual House Church page for it, but if you just go robschannel.com/Torah-fellowship-map, it'll take you to this page. And on this page, this is a map of the world, and all these blue icons are people doing what we're doing right now. I mean, this is just huge. And if you go just to the United States, I mean, you gotta like really zoom in just to find space between the blue dots. And if you click on a blue dot, it tells you, like in the one I just clicked on right there, it's Marilyn Lee, gives their address and phone number. So just go there and find a dot that's somewhere close to where you live, and make a phone call. You may find there's somebody really close to you. There may be a whole bunch of people really close to you that you can meet. I mean, if you just go, if you live in Texas, I mean, look at where I live here in Dallas. I mean, there's plenty of places within a 20-minute drive that you can, hook up with.
Is there any way you could get me the widget code for that so I can throw that on my website as well to help people connect? That's awesome, man.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's yeah, I'll see if maybe it's right here. Share, embed on my site. So if you click on the little icon, it says embed on my site. You can go ahead and embed that on Now You See TV.
Yeah, for sure. I'm embedded on the Virtual House Church page here, and that way, because I mean, right, there's so many people to connect with. That's how we met our first few families that we used to fellowship with on Shabbat here in Evansville. It was through, I think it was on 119's site. They had one, or somebody had one. I can't remember who it was, but I just called them up. I'm like, hey, I see you guys are our Hebrew roots or follow Torah or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, we don't know anybody else. So I'm like, okay, well, let's go meet up. So we went to Dan Hatt's house and hung out for a while. They moved over not too far from Zachary Bauer now, so pretty cool though.
Yeah. Like I said, I got this widget from 119 Ministries website, and I mean, just in your area alone, I mean, look at all this. You know, there's a ton of places for people to check out. So, you know, if you're in the United States and you're lonely and don't know anybody that's doing what we're doing, and, you know, we certainly welcome you to join us every week here on Virtual House Church, but there's something to be said for that one-on-one fellowship. And, you know, and it's, you know, all over the world. I mean, it's not just the United States. I mean, if you look on this map, obviously there's a lot of it taking place in Europe and in different parts of South America and Africa. You know, nothing much going on in Russia, at least not that anybody's posting or willing to post, or in China, because it's probably all underground. But, you know, in other more free countries, there's lots of places for people to hook up.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. It's such a blessing. And if you do a home fellowship, you could always stream it together here on this and have questions between you, discuss it. So that's what we did. We'd find a stream of somebody playing their Shabbat service and Torah portions, and we just listen to it while we're sitting there, you know, and have a good time, eat food, and drink a little bit of wine and hang out. So
yeah. Well, do we have any more questions on the Torah portion?
I think so, John.
Let's see here. Cod asked about December period. Is it okay to study and acknowledge the Advent?
If you're talking about the birth of Christ, he wasn't born in December. In fact, if you want to celebrate his birthday, well, it's coming up this Sunday. I'll be, you know, at the conference. I'm going to be in Austin. I'm going to be saying "Happy Birthday, Yeshua" on September 11th, which is 2 days from now. So yeah, that was the day, the physical day that he was born. If you want to celebrate on the Moedim, or the appointed time on which he was born, that would be, in my opinion, the Feast of Trumpets, or Yom Teruah, which is the beginning of the fall feasts. So yeah, the Advent or the birth of Christ, it's not in December. It's in September.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to support that idea. You know, I've heard a lot of good stuff to support the idea of tabernacles as well. So I mean, it's definitely not December though. So
yeah, and that's not one of those things that I think is worth fighting about. You know, if you're confused on it, you got 21 days to celebrate his birthday. Why don't you do the whole, from trumpets to through tabernacles, to celebrate the whole season? You know, right there. If you have to do 21 days of, I don't want to call it Christmas, but of Christ's birth, arrival, tabernacling among us, however you want to word it. But I mean, there's a 21-day celebration that you can have. So forget the 12 days of Christmas. You got 21 if you want to do it during the fall Moedim.
Party hard.
You know, I find it interesting that chapter 18 talks about conjuring magic, calling up spirits of the dead, all this stuff, and then you get to verse 15, and it says, "Your Elohim shall raise up a prophet like me from amidst your brothers, and to listen to him." And verse 18, you know, he follows it up, "I shall raise up them a prophet like you out of the midst of their brothers, and I shall put my words." It's like, look, guys, don't do this, but do what he says, and do it the way he says to do it.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know if I can find it on the fly here. But what always caught my attention about that, because like in King James, it's a capitalized P. Verse 15, "The Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee." The prophet that's like unto Moses is Yeshua. But it's interesting when the religious leaders came to John the Baptist and they asked him if he was Elijah. No. Are you the Messiah? No. Are you the prophet? No. What I found interesting about that was, you know, they knew Elijah was supposed to come back, so he said, "No, I'm not Elijah," so that ruled that one out. But they had they seem to have had I guess I would say a misunderstanding concerning the issue of the prophet like unto Moses. That because it seems like they had this idea of a prophet like unto Moses and of the Messiah, like that they're not one and the same, like they're two separate individuals. And I based that on the way they approach John the Baptist. Are you Elijah? No. Are you the prophet? No. Are you the Messiah? No. So they seem to have this idea, because when that they weren't one and the same. I always found that rather interesting.
It is interesting, and the word shamal means listen and obey, and it's just amazing. People, and especially now, the dispensationalist idea that Yeshua wasn't necessarily, the Sermon on the Mount wasn't to us, it was to the Jews, and all this different stuff. It just kind of, that verse right there to me just blows it out of the water. Just, I mean, he's the one we're supposed to listen to and obey. He is the Torah in the flesh. It's just amazing. I don't know if you've heard that recent. I guess it's not recent. I don't even know. I've just never heard it before. But I heard somebody talking about that Yeshua's Sermon on the Mount wasn't talking to believers. It's talking to the Jews. Have you guys heard that recently? It's pretty crazy.
No, I haven't heard that idea. For me, coming into this understanding of Torah, I've had to really, as Lex Meyer say, unlearn a lot of what I used to think that I knew. And as I've done that and revisited the New Testament and the words of Yeshua, and specifically the parables, they're not just quaint little stories that he's telling that have spiritual significance. He's talking about very specific things related to the issues of the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And so I'm still very new into, first it was laying the foundation of Torah and understanding Torah. And now, and I'm going into my 8th year of doing this, I'm starting to transition to paying more attention to, okay, now that I have a fairly, I don't want to say solid, but pretty decent understanding of the Torah, I'm going to go back to the New Testament and reread it with the understanding of Torah in mind, because in the New Testament, whenever people, like the good Bereans, when people were trying to tell them about Yeshua, they were searching the scriptures daily. Well, what were the scriptures? The scriptures were not the New Testament. The scriptures were the Torah and the prophets. So the go-to place for the people in the New Testament to understand what they were hearing was the Torah and the prophets. So that's what we're doing right now. So after doing this for 7 years, and getting a much better grasp on it than I had before, and then going and looking at the parables of Yeshua and other things that he said, it takes on a whole other totally different meaning than what I previously understood.
John 5:45 and 46 says it all. To get back into Torah, he says, "For if you believe Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words?" Mm-hmm. They're one and the same. I mean, that was just profound for me when I came into Torah. And as a matter of fact, it was I think in one of your presentations, Rob, that just stuck out at me, about 3.5 years ago. So getting on to the next question, Diana's, she says, I don't know how relevant this is, but I want to know what Rob thinks about the blind man Yeshua healed and why he saw men as trees the first time. Is there a metaphor there or some prophetic spiritual significance to that vision?
I was trying to remember who did a teaching on it, if it was Zach Bauer or 119. I don't remember who it was. It was a while back that somebody had done a study. I haven't personally done a study on it, so I can't really give much of a comment on it. I want to say one of those guys did. I'd have to go back and look it up, though. I see another comment that's in the thing here. It's not really related to the Torah portion, but somebody was asking about what did I eat to get rid of parasites?
That was the very first question, man, before the show started.
Yeah, I don't know where they got that from, but I actually happen to have it right here in front of me. So it's this product right here. It's called Parastroy. You can get it at the Vitamin Shop or GNC or places like that. It has 2 different products in it, Pararid and Parasweep, and you do this for a couple weeks, and it pretty much gets rid of all kinds of stuff. So
that would be a great wrestling name. Parastroy.
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 Yeah.
You get that on your side. Are you getting paid to promote Parastroy?
Yeah. Somebody's going to come out right now and say, "Oh, Skiba's in it for the money. He's selling on the Sabbath." Blah blah blah. There'll be some knucklehead that'll do it. I can almost guarantee it. The lunatics are breeding like rabbits these days.
There's a question for John Pounders and myself. Will we do a study on the calendars? and that comes from Lydia. I remember Lydia asking me that today, and it's like, my thinking on the calendars is I'm doing the best I can over here, with what I got, and I see a lot of arguments start up because of the calendars, so I don't really talk about getting into it, but, it would be an interesting study for us to take on, John. Now you see TV.
I know we've had Zen talk about it before on, but I don't know, man. I I don't think anybody knows for sure what day it even is, to be honest with you. I think that there's a good I mean, we know when the month starts based on the barley and the, or I guess based on, we know when the year starts based on the barley, and even that's been split and divided this year. So who knows, man? I mean, all I know is, like, I know when the seventh day is to me, and to probably everybody that's been doing it for the last couple thousand years, and that's what I go by right now. Now, if I'm willing to be open to being wrong. If I find something that's like that convicts me, it's like this is this, then I will change my theory on it. But I'll do a study on it. I mean, yeah, we'll check it out. I've done a little bit on it. Like I said, I don't know, man. People don't even know what month it is right now. There's a big division in that. So some people don't know when the next feast is going to start. It's supposed to be this month or next month. So, there you go.
Yeah, I just see a lot of arguments, caused by the calendar discussion. Go ahead, Rob.
Unrelated to that, I was looking up that verse. It's 19 through 23, I think, where John was asked the question. Yeah, here it is. Let me pop it up on the screen share. It's in John chapter 1, verses 19 through 23. And he says, I'm not the Christ. And they said, are you Elijah or Elias? And King James, no. Are you that prophet? No. So that's the verse I couldn't find before, but where he's, they had this kind of concept of three. There was the Christ or the Messiah, Elijah, and the prophet. It was driving me crazy. I couldn't find that verse, but here it is. As far as the calendar, though, I watched well, it wasn't really a video. It was a YouTube video, but all it was audio with a hold screen that my friend Jacob Zaremba had sent me. I posted on my Facebook the other day regarding the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the woman who was given the presentation gave a very articulate argument, a very interesting argument, that the people, whoever they were, that were living in the Dead Sea area where the Dead Sea Scrolls were buried, apparently were following some sort of solar lunar calendar, presumably based on Enoch and Jubilees. I know a lot of people out there are doing the Enoch calendar, and they really believe the Enoch calendar, and they believe the lunar Sabbath. Here's the thing: my biggest problem with the lunar Sabbath, well, there's several problems I have with it. One, when I tried to test it out historically, it falls apart pretty quick, especially during the Passion Week. I just remember it really falls apart. Numerous cultures around the world, to this day, the day that they call what we call Saturday, the day that we refer to as Saturday, their name for that day is either a derivative of Shabbat in Hebrew or of Sabbaton in Greek. So, in fact, I think, everywhere in your Bible where it says first day of the week, here's one of those controversy things. Go look it up. Everywhere those of you who believe in Sunday worship because the disciples met on the first day of the week, go look it up. Look it up in Greek. You'll see that the Greek is miaton sabbaton. Well, sabbaton is the Greek word for Sabbath. Everywhere else it's translated as Sabbath. So, and the word day is inserted. It's a italicized word that the translators put into the text. I believe because they're trying to push a personal bias. But I called my friend Peter, who grew up in Greece. That's his primary language. He has no dog in the hunt, has no idea why I'm even asking the question. He has no idea of any debate. He's my go-to guy when I have a Greek question. So I call Peter up. I say, hey, Peter, if I said miaton sabbaton, what did you just hear? He said, once on Saturday. So, I mean, he didn't miss a beat. You know, that was his response. So, and there, just if you, I need to post it somewhere where it could be accessed easy. But at one time I had researched all of the different countries that have a word for the day we call Saturday that is a derivative of either Shabbat or Sabbaton, and there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. So multiple cultures have a word for the day we call Saturday that relates to the Hebrew or Greek word for Sabbath. So that's one very compelling piece of evidence. But the other problem I have with the lunar Sabbath is if it's based on the moon doesn't show up until day 4 of creation. But God took his rest on day 7. So if you're going to say lunar Sabbath, then he should have taken his day of rest on day 11, but he didn't. So, for me, the whole purpose of Sabbath, to remember the Sabbath, is related to the account of creation where God himself took a day of rest for himself after doing his 6 days of creative labor. So Sabbath is meant to remember and emulate what God himself did. So God worked for 7 days, took a rest on the 7th day, created the moon on the 4th day. So that's just it doesn't work for me. I mean, Enoch and Jubilees may put that idea forward, but the creation itself in Genesis doesn't seem to support that, at least in my mind.
I agree. I mean, that's where I'm at right now. Like I said, though, if I see something, and I know you're the same way, but I just, right, and plus, at the time of Yeshua being around, I don't think a lot's changed as far as, like, how they've done the Sabbath in those last couple thousand years. I mean, they have, the Jews have still been around for a long time, and they've been the keepers of the book still up to this point, still the keepers of the Sabbath, at least as far as I know. So I don't see why, what would have, broke down and changed. But then again, what do I know? So
I will say that one of the compelling arguments for lunar Sabbath is, okay, let's put the hypothetical scenario of a guy gets conked on the head in a shipwreck, and he has amnesia and he washes up on the beach of he's Tom Hanks, let's say, he gets into an airplane crash and he's the only survivor of the crash, and he washes up on a desert island, what was that, Outcast or what it was? I can't remember the name of the movie, but
Castaway, I think.
Castaway. Okay, so you're Tom Hanks with Wilson, Castaway, and you can't remember anything. How would you keep the Sabbath? Because you've lost track of the 7 days, so you don't know what day of the week it is because you can't remember. How would you ever be able to get it right? The lunar Sabbatarians have a good argument, in my opinion, is, well, you just wait for the new moon and you count 7 days. Okay, and it's a stellar reminder every month. And by that, as I understand the reasoning, it resets. So there are times where you have 2 Sabbaths, kind of like back to back, not just in the times because some of the Moedim, the appointed times, have what they call like a high Sabbath, like the day of unleavened bread, like day 1, would be a Sabbath that's not a weekly Sabbath. See, this was one of the things when I was looking at the Passion Week, where by the lunar Sabbath understanding, it seems to get really convoluted during Passion Week, where everything seems to work out perfectly for him to have been crucified on a Wednesday, with Wednesday night at sunset going into Thursday being the high Sabbath of unleavened bread. That's the Sabbath that they wanted to get everybody down from the cross in time before the Sabbath began. That was a high Sabbath. And then you have the weekly Sabbath on Saturday. And in between you have them buying the spices and all that stuff. So the Passion Week seems to work out perfectly for a Wednesday crucifixion, Thursday high Sabbath, Saturday weekly Sabbath. You run into all kinds of weird problems with the lunar Sabbath when you actually plot it out. Now, it is convenient that a new moon sort of starts. Actually, I'm trying to remember how it goes now. It's been a while since I looked at it, and I could be wrong on this. As I understand it, I think there's a new moon, which has its own celebration. You have a celebration of the new moon, and then I believe day 1 begins. So I don't think that's day 1. I think day 1 begins the day after that, and you count to the 7th day, and that would be your Sabbath rest based on the new moon. Again, I could be wrong. It's been a while since I looked at it. I remember I went through quite a lot of research on this probably 5 or 6 years ago when the questions first came to my mind, and I read a lot of very compelling stuff. There's another group of people, I'm trying to think of the name of the YouTube channel. I can't think of it. Anyway, it's a Seventh-day Adventist group that does lunar Sabbath, and they make a very compelling argument. They've got some really good videos, and you watch the videos, you go, wow, shoot, that kind of makes sense. But these are the reasons why I reject it. I mean, when I tried to go through the various arguments, there are good arguments, but there's other ones that don't hold up. So what happens to Castaway? I don't know. If the lunar Sabbath is not true, I don't know how the guy who has amnesia would ever get back in sync with the seventh-day Saturday Sabbath. I don't have an answer for that.
So that goes along with Ed Taylor's question. He says, how does Rob interpret John 20 with the same phrasing? And I believe that's when the young ladies go to the tomb, and it says on day 1. I think in John chapter 20.
Yeah, John 20, the first day of the week. It's not how Rob interprets it. It's go look it up in the Greek. It's me. In fact, let's do it. Well, let's just go ahead and do it right now. We'll go ahead and do it. So you don't think I'm crazy. People think I'm crazy anyway. But let's go to John 20. I like to use Bible.cc for stuff like this. Click on parallel. Okay, so King James. Now on the first day of the week, click on the Greek tab. You'll see the word "the" is in parentheses because it's inserted. It doesn't exist in the text, and also so is the word "day." Those two words were inserted. You got Mia translated for first, tone of the, and Sabbaton is translated here as week, but that's not what the word Sabbaton means. The word Sabbaton is Sabbath. Now, this is sort of an updated deal. Well, actually, what they did with Strong's Concordance is they looked to see how it's used in the King James, and so that's how they put it in there. They said, well, King James translated as of the week, so they added that as part of the definition, a week. But it's the seventh day. It's the Shabbat. It's the Sabbath. It's the Sabbath day. And everywhere else it's used, except for there's like 3 or 4 places where first day of the week comes up. Only in those places is it translated first day of the week. Everywhere else it's translated as Sabbath. Sabbaton is always translated as Sabbath. And I did a rather lengthy blog on that, actually a series of them. Oh, it's in the Facebook notes. So if you go to robschannel.com, click on Facebook notes, Ephraim Awakening, and you scroll down to, I got a whole thing on Sabbath. Let me see where I put it here. First day of the week or the first of the Sabbaths. If you click on that one, and there's another one, Satan sabotaging the Sabbaton and finding our Sabbatismos. You'll want to read, if we're not going to go through it right here, but really these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I actually got Lunar Weekly right here. I wonder if I actually covered that here. Cool. These are the ones you're going to really want to go through if you want an in-depth study on it. First day of the week or first of the Sabbath. This is where I break down all the different verses and where it says what it says. And the conclusion I came to was that you actually count Sabbaths between Passover and Pentecost. That is a time period where it's the Feast of Weeks, where it's called counting the Omer, where you actually count off Sabbaths. And several of the places, specifically the one in Acts 20, and Acts 20 tells you point blank that that's what's going on right here, because you have the issue of unleavened bread right here in verse 6, and then Paul later says that he wants to get to Pentecost by all means, by verse 16. So you're in the time period between Passover and unleavened bread and Pentecost. And so the proper translation would be, and the first of the Sabbaths, not first day of the week. First of the Sabbaths would be when you're actually counting Sabbaths. And that may be the case with all of them. I can't say that for sure that that's the case for all of them, but it certainly fits the case where they're in Acts chapter 20. But at any rate, just to save time, go to robschannel.com, Facebook notes, Ephraim Awakening, and these are the links you're going to want to click on to read up a lot more on that stuff. Oh, here it is. Lunar week or Sabbath. I did put it together. Cool. So this was when I was doing that research. Here are all the different, in Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, Armenian, all these different countries, and the words that they use for Sabbath are words derived either from Shabbat or from Sabbaton.
So somebody new coming into Torah, Rob, because this is one of the questions from Valerie, and it's validated because when you're new and you're trying to observe the Sabbath the best you can, and like when we started, we had no clue what we were doing, but we got caught up with Sunday worship was just bad, right? Mm-hmm. And that was at the beginning. It's like, and she asked a similar question, that everybody usually has, but I'm suddenly wondering why exactly Sunday worship is wrong.
I've never said that Sunday worship was wrong.
I never heard it.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who say, hey, you want to worship on Sunday? Great, go ahead. You should worship God 24/7, every day of the week. You want to worship God on Monday? Great. Worship Tuesday? Great. Sunday? No problem. Just don't think that you've replaced Sabbath with Sunday. That's where the issue comes in. If you're saying, I don't need to do Sabbath anymore because that's for the Jews, I'm going to worship God on Sunday, you are effectively replacing Sabbath with Sunday. Now, if you want to do what we're doing right now and have Bible study and a time of worship and whatnot on Friday night going into Saturday and consider that your Sabbath and go ahead and go to Sunday church because your family goes there or whatever, I see no problem with that because you're not replacing Sabbath. You're just worshiping on another day, in addition to Sabbath. So there are other people out there who say, if you worship on Sunday, you're wrong. You should worship God every day. So as long as you're not replacing Sabbath, I don't see any problem with it.
Totally agree with that, man.
But what you might find is after you're doing Sabbath for a while, you're going to find, and there's just something different. I can't really explain it except this is like date night with our husband, our heavenly, we're the bride, he's the husband. He has set this day aside to meet with us. He says, come hang out with me on this day. So, this is his daily planner, and he says, honey, let's go out on a date. Well, I mean, if you show up for the date on Sunday, he's still going to appreciate that you love him, but he's going but honey, I had a date night set up for us yesterday. I mean, I don't know why you didn't want to show up yesterday. I mean, this is cool what we're doing today, but I had a special time set aside for yesterday. There's something special about meeting on Sabbath, and when I've started to do that myself, I can only give my own personal testimony. I have been a student of the Scriptures since I was a kid and had the ability to read. I mean, I got saved at age 7, but was reading the Bible before that. I finally just came to the point where I understood that I needed what the Bible was telling me by age 7, but from the time I could read, I've been reading the Bible. Read the Bible my whole life, and there was never a season where I went astray. I mean, there were times where I wasn't doing all the right things probably, but it was never a time where I ever backslid and dissed the church and forget the Bible. Never. I've been in the Bible my entire life. I have never learned more than I did and than I have since I started doing Sabbath. Like just the first year, I learned more in that first year than in all of the 30 plus years prior, probably 40 years prior. 40 years. I'm 47, so I started this when I was 39, going into my 40th year. So all of that, and I was a Sunday morning Sunday school, Sunday morning service, Sunday night service, Wednesday night Baptist kind of guy, So always in church, always reading the Scriptures, and a full-time missionary for 6.5 years. So taking all of that in consideration, well, I mean it when I say I learned more in the first year of doing Sabbath Bible study than in all years. So what's different? I just think there's a different anointing, if I can use that word, on Bible study that takes place on the day that God said, hey, come hang out with me. So after you do that and you see for yourself, and I've talked to numerous people that have had similar testimony, they all say the same thing. After you do that for a little while, you're going to go to church and you realize this is just a country club. I could do the same thing with these people at Starbucks or wherever you choose to go, to hang out with somebody, whatever favorite restaurant of yours, and get the same thing because I'm not getting anything out of the pulpit. I mean, this is barely a milkshake compared to the steak that I just had last night, And then when you start hearing them dissing the Sabbath, I mean, several people from our own home study group were doing Sabbath and Sunday for a while, and then the pastor started preaching against Sabbath, and my friend Chad, he was like, well, I guess I'm out of here, because the pastor was dissing Sabbath. For me, I've left numerous churches for various reasons because what was coming from the pulpit's not what's in the Scriptures, and I think that's what you end up finding when you spend time in God's Word on Sabbath with the anointing that comes with meeting Him on His appointed time. and then you start contrasting that to what you're hearing on Sunday, eventually you're going to spit Sunday out and say, this is just, it's not cutting it for me anymore.
Yeah, if they were taking Sunday and saying this is the seventh day and we're going to observe a Sabbath day, I would have even less of a problem with that, but they still buy and sell on that day. They don't even really take it as a Sabbath. It's just a day that they go and to church, because most of them are going to eat pork sandwiches after. So, it's like,
yeah, right. That's the other problem is after you start going on Shabbat, worshiping on Shabbat and studying Torah tend to go hand in hand. I mean, I know there's like Seventh-day Adventists aren't necessarily all about Torah, although they're doing Shabbat. They may not necessarily do the feast, although they're doing Shabbat. But as you start doing Shabbat and Torah, and start realizing, hey, this, not only does God say don't eat it, it's just not good for you. I mean, we covered that in I think it was last week's study or one of the previous ones. Secular scientists who have no dog in this hunt, who don't care about the Bible or the Torah, will tell you that stuff's bad for you. So once you kind of start understanding that for yourself, and then you go to the Sunday deal, where you get a really watered-down message for maybe an hour, 45 minutes or so on a Sunday, and then everybody goes out for a ham dinner afterwards, you're like, what am I doing here? I'm in another world, man. And I mean, it's tough because we all still have family members, friends, loved ones that are still in that paradigm. So, and you don't want to come across as I'm holier than thou or anything like that. It's just, I've tried to find loving ways, like with my own family. I just say, guys, that's just not good for you. I care about your health. And by the way, God cares about your health too. That's why He said not to eat it.
I was looking at a verse and something brought to mind. This is kind of, it's back to the subject we're talking about before, about the Sabbath, when it is or whatever. And in Matthew 24, it talks about pray. It says, pray that your flight not be in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. And it's talking about the tribulation. There'll be a great tribulation that's not been since the beginning. So, like, what does that say about the day that the Sabbath? Because right now we know over in Israel, and even around the world, most people that follow Torah would say that the Sabbath is on a Saturday. So, like, this verse is a prophetic verse. So, to you, what is that? I mean, to me, that kind of discounts the idea that the Sabbath kind of switches around, but I don't know.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that verse quite a bit, actually, where it talks about pray that your flight be not on the Sabbath. I'm not quite sure what to make of that, and the reason I'm not quite sure what to make of it is because of what happened in the Maccabees. If you read the first 4 chapters of First Maccabees, you'll see that in the beginning of the story, where the Romans were coming in and they were setting up their pagan gods and killing anybody that they're like making people eat pork, and if you circumcise your baby, they'll kill your baby. I mean, all kinds of just horrible stuff. And they started killing all the Torah keepers, basically. And there was a group that said, we will not fight on the Sabbath. And so the Romans came in, and they were easy prey. I mean, just slaughter everybody on the Sabbath. But then the Maccabees, that family and other people that were in league with them, said, look, guys, if we don't do something, they will kill everybody. The Romans figured out, hey, if we attack them on Saturday, they don't fight back. Cool. I mean, let's just go in and slaughter everybody. So the Maccabees said, if God is against that, then we'll die. But if God be for us, we've got to take a stand just to preserve our race, our clan, our family, our name, our tribe, whatever you want to call it. And so they did, and they were extremely victorious. I mean, you just read the book of Maccabees, and I mean, these guys were like superhumans because clearly God was fighting for them and with them. So because of the testimony of the Maccabees, and oh, by the way, if you are locked in, because to be fair, jobs, people who work a 9 to 5, a lot of jobs anyway, a lot of employers will give them some time period off around December 24th, 25th. That's just a given holiday that they give you. So if you're used to taking that time and your employer gives you that time to go spend with your family, my whole thing is if you still want to do something on December 25th, don't go celebrating the birthday of Jesus because he wasn't born on December 25th. But if you want to celebrate something, Hanukkah, in my opinion, is a really good alternative to celebrate on that day because that was the date, December 25th, when Antiochus Epiphanes set up what the Maccabees, who some consider to be scripture, called the abomination of desolation. The abomination of desolation was set up on December 25th in the temple. 3 years later, to the day, December 25th, 3 days later, or 3 years later, the Maccabees tore it all down and rededicated the temple back to God, back to Yahuwah. So that's why it's called the Feast of Dedication or rededication. So if you want to celebrate something on December 25th, a good thing to celebrate is getting rid of Christmas, getting rid of all the paganism, doing the same thing the Maccabees did. Get rid of all the pagan stuff and rededicate your life to Yahuwah, and do so on December 25th. I see no problem with that at all. I mean, it's not a Moedim of Scripture, but Yeshua was at the Festival of Lights. So he it doesn't say he's celebrating, but he's there. So the implication is, I mean, why else would he go there? And when they're doing some of the things that were taking place, he was there. So and I think it's rather poetic because in the Maccabees, because the altar had been defiled by the blood of pigs, they were all offering pigs and cooking pig meat and stuff, pork, on the altar, which totally desecrated it. So the Maccabees tore down all the stones that were defiled, and they didn't know what to do with it. There was no provision in the Torah to what to do if the altar has been defiled. So what they did was they just made a pile of stones, put it off to the side, and said, well, maybe a prophet will show up someday and tell us what to do with them. So they just put them out there, and they created a new altar, a fresh one. And some say that when Yeshua said, if you don't worship me, these stones will cry out, that he may have been pointing to that pile of stones, that defiled pile of stones. Implication being, the Gentiles, the Goyim, the defiled ones, will worship me. It's an interesting observation. I don't know that we can prove it, but I think we can definitely prove from Scripture that Yeshua was attending the celebration of lights. So, if December 25th is an important day to you and your family gets together, it's a tradition, fine. Get rid of all the pagan stuff and rededicate your life, and do so on a time when your employer gives you the time off to do it anyway, which is December 25th.
I agree, man. I think December 24th is when Hanukkah starts this year anyway, so it's right around the same time. We love it. My family, my kids, they light up when they hear Hanukkah's coming around. They love it so much. Get to light the candles, and we give them gifts too. And we talk about just because, not because we're trying to follow the pagan ways, but we just like to let them enjoy it, to just really enjoy the time. We eat every night on that night for 7 nights, and it's just fun, man. It's a fun time of the year. It's my favorite time of a year other than Passover, and we just thoroughly enjoy it, and the kids love it, man. They're 3 and 5 now, and they look for it. They're always talking about it all year long, waiting for it, because they love it. So, and also my family, my parents, they know we don't celebrate Christmas and stuff. They came down because they wanted to spend time with us during that time of year, and they celebrated Hanukkah with us, which was really cool, instead of celebrating Christmas, because they still wanted to spend time with us. We still wanted to spend time with them, but they knew we weren't willing to budge on the issue of Christmas, and so it was great. So, yeah. Totally in agreement with that, Rob. It's awesome.
Yeah, cool.
I'm putting those links in the chat room now, Rob.
Okay. Yeah, there was 1, 2, 3, 4 that I posted in there. In the Google Hangout chat, it looks like it's all one big, huge blob of links, but there's actually 4 links there.
I got it taken care of.
You the man.
I got it.
Cool. Anything else from the Torah portion?
Yeah, there's some.
It's interesting where you, John Hall, you were talking last week about Renee Moses and my twitching getting on again. I mean, right there, what's it, Deuteronomy 18, talking about verses 20 through 22. If they say they're a prophet, but what they said, it didn't come true. They're not the deal.
Sam Castro in the chat room said earlier, as it was scrolling by, he says, I wonder how all these September prophets are going to fare this year.
Oh, I know. It's every year, man. September. Well, to be fair, that's where the Moedim, the appointed times of the last days, are going to start. They're going to start in September, September, October time period. So when Yeshua comes back again. So to be fair, we should be keeping an eye on things. But there's just way too many things that have yet to be, in my mind, in my opinion, there are way too many things still left yet unfulfilled that still need to happen for me to even really be, I think I'll still be practicing the Mikra in Hebrew, the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and Tabernacles. I'm going to be practicing those because there's going to come a time in a fall period where it's all going to come down. But man, it's like every year you can count on it. It's September, between now and September 23rd. 23rd is usually one of those big days everybody likes to point to, especially last year. All the rapture guys, preacher rapture guys, oh yeah, this is it. Some kind of meteor, some kind of asteroid, some kind of stellar alignment. Always something going on. So, on the one hand, you roll your eyes and you're like, really? Again? Here we go again. Same thing. No apologies from anybody that I've seen from last year when everybody thought for sure, September 23rd was it. Where are the apologies? Where are I was wrong? I haven't seen any of it, but whatever. All the Walmarts are closing. We're all going to be in FEMA camps.
Well, John can tell you, I get a twitch because we, the very first show, and I've told you this before, the very first show I did with John, the guy was setting a date. At Passover, and I was just asking him questions of how you getting this date, and I was just ignorant and stupid that I couldn't read what he was trying to tell me, but I was reading it right back to him verbatim, and I'm saying, please explain this to me because I don't see it. And he almost, his jugular vein distension was coming out, and he had veins popping out of his forehead. The show, John says, I don't think I can put that on the air.
I was like, we got to stop this guy. Sorry, we're going to have to. That was the first and only time I've ever done that, but that guy was, I thought he was going to have a heart attack for real. I really did. Like, he was already in a wheelchair, and he could tell he had his face was getting red as a beet. He was, oh my gosh, dude, I thought he was going to die right there on live. So I stopped it.
I hate when that happens.
It does. Chapter 20, verse 4, and then we'll ask you questions. Sure. For Yahweh your Elohim is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. We're all dealing with the issues of our families and friends who don't understand what we're going through. The way documentary goes into this a lot, and we really enjoyed it. Patty used it as a, she started class this Monday with that documentaries, and they go back and they discussed it. So I thought that was very cool. But this verse popped out at me as we were reading tonight. So we're going to get into the rest of the questions.
Well, I want to comment on that. Chapter 20 had all kinds of cool stuff in it.
Yeah.
And I actually made a note for myself. I highlighted in my Deuteronomy workbook here. I highlighted verses 1 through 9, and I wrote next to it 1 Maccabees chapter 4. Verses 46 through 60. I don't remember exactly what that said, but I was highlighting that and making a reference on that. But it is interesting if you look at, first of all, he says, "I'm going to go with you to war." That's a really good thing. If you're getting ready to go to war and you're afraid of your enemy, just knowing that Yahuwah, God Almighty Himself, is going to go before you, the odds are on our favor. They're on our side. I don't care how many people you got over there. We got the King of Kings and Lord of Lords on our side. That's number one. Number two, if you look at the way it's set up, if you think of Braveheart, where Mel Gibson was on his horse in front of his troops, he's giving that pep talk. He's going back and forth, and he's giving a rah-rah speech, and everybody's like, "Yeah, we're behind you." Well, if you look at the way this is like, okay, and the leader shall go before the armies and say, "Hey, you guys, anybody scared? Okay, yeah, go home. Anybody just get married? Okay, go home. Anybody plant some fruit or anything like that? Oh yeah, you haven't eaten any? Okay, yeah, go home. You know, I mean, they're like totally weeding out the. I mean, it's kind of funny when you look at it. It's like almost any excuse you can imagine to get out of going to war, they practically give you right there, and whatever's left, people are like, okay, let's go. I mean, really? That's how you're going to fight a battle? Well, if you got God himself going before you, you can afford to have half your troops leave because they just got married or just planted a vineyard or whatever.
Yeah, no doubt about that, man. It's and somebody asked a question to me real quick. I just want to refer them to something. They asked me, how can you tell false prophet like there? Because in the reading we just talked about, you talked about false prophets or whatever. I think 119, Fruit of Wolves, and Deuteronomy 13 test is a really good teaching. If you go to 119, their Fruit of Wolves teaching, and I think is it Deuteronomy 13 test? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Those are
yeah,
really good.
that's a real good one. Deuteronomy 13 test. Well, I mean, a real good litmus test is, did what they say come true?
Yeah.
Because if it didn't, well, sorry.
Yeah. They're a false prophet. If what they said didn't come true, you should never listen to them again. And that's weird about Pentecostal churches, man. I don't know how many times I've had somebody that acted like they're a fortune teller and like, in 1 year this is going to happen. And it's like, dude, I mean, I would never tell somebody like God told me this unless like God literally came down, told me that, and I tested him a couple times to make sure it was him. And I just wouldn't do it. I don't understand that whole way of thinking. It's so weird.
Yeah, I'd be afraid of that too. It's like whenever you're talking to somebody and they're real adamant about whatever it is, and they say, "Well, I have the Rhema word." Oh, okay, well, you just threw the trump card. I have the Rhema word.
You need some Imodium for that.
Yeah, sorry. I like you. I would be really hesitant to ever, unless I was absolutely 100% positive. I saw a vision with multiple confirmation. God himself was in, the angel of the Lord, Yeshua, whatever, standing in front of me saying, thus saith the Lord, you got to go say this. Okay. Then I'll probably go out and say, well, I had a vision. This is what I saw. This is what I believe I'm supposed to say. But other than that, man, I just wouldn't do it. That's why, anybody who's been to my lectures, I generally start all my lectures with saying, don't believe a thing I say. Look, I'm just going to tell you some things that I think I understand to be true. Search and see if these things be true. Search for yourself. I'm just doing the best I can. I'm a student, so I'm real leery of those people who are so adamant, so sure that they're right, and especially if they throw the "I got the Rhema word" down. It's like, man, really? That's kind of scary, man. If you think about it.
And they throw it around like crazy too. And also, I guess another point to if they don't teach the commandments of Yahweh, then also they're considered somebody that's false. So that's another one. And
that would be a real big one. If you got somebody who's claiming to be a prophet, but they're not keeping Sabbath, they're not doing the feast, and they're talking against the Torah, nope.
How many times have you guys heard, but it's a salvation issue. They make it into a salvation issue. And you find yourself explaining to them, we do this because we love him.
Right.
That, we respect him and we want to do what the Father asks us to do because he does so much for us, and we just want to give back to him. And he tells us his love language here, Deuteronomy 13, and then the last couple of verses in 18, you can use that as a litmus test. But, we're to do what he says. It's not out of salvation, but, a lot of the times we get hit with that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the previous shows. For me, anybody who gets kind of hung up on that whole thing, my go-to place is 1 John chapter 2 through 5. That settles the issue, at least for me. It does anyway.
Yeah, it settles it, man. There's no doubt about it. And people, and like, yeah, it's not like that's not how we get saved. Nobody ever says that. I've never heard you say that, Rob. I've never heard John say that. I've never said that. But all the time I get accused of that idea that salvation comes through following the Torah. No, I mean, it's just an automatic reaction. Like if you get hit by a truck, automatic things going to happen. You're going to get crippled. I mean, which is, I guess, that's a bad thing. But, following Torah is not a bad thing. I mean, if something happens, you're going to act a certain way. And so by loving Yeshua, you love him. He saved your life. He did everything he can. You ask him, how can I please you? What can I do? I mean, almost everybody I've talked to that's asked those questions ends up coming to Torah, and that's just the way it is. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The other thing I want to point out in chapter 20 is it's interesting when they're talking about, who they're going to go to war with and what the rules of engagement are. And I mean, you have what I would classify as the rules of engagement for normal people in verses like 10 through 15. You end up killing the men because that's, you're fighting them in war, but you can take the women and children and the animals and stuff as spoils of war. Everything's good. I mean, that's typical rules of engagement. But when you get to verses 16 through like the rest of that chapter, those are Nephilim. I mean, it's telling you right there. But of the cities of these people which Lord thy God doth give thee for an inheritance, thou shalt save alive nothing. Nothing that breathes, it says. Nothing that breatheth. King James in verse 16. I mean, these are utterly, in verse 17, you shall utterly destroy them. If you just do a keyword search on the phrase utterly destroy and look at all the times where that phrase is used during rules of engagement, you'll see it's generally followed by, namely, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites. Well, go to Genesis chapter 10, verses 6 through 20. Those are the same people, those are the ites that the Israelites are consistently told over and over and over again to utterly destroy. And Amorites, I mean, we've got the testimony of Amos telling you that Amorites got as tall as cedar trees. These are the giants. These are the Nephilim. Those are the ones that the Israelite rules of engagement were consistently utterly destroy. Wipe out everything that breatheth in the land.
Would you say anything about that? They didn't tell them to do that to Egypt. They didn't tell them to do that to a lot of countries, because a lot of those countries you can find that if you trace back in the Table of Nations, they kind of go back to that. And these Hittites and all these people, you can't find them in the Table of Nations. You'll never find them because they're not.
Well, they're there, but I mean, they're in chapter 10, verses 6 through 20. These are the descendants of Ham that were specifically described consistently as giants. The Amorites came from Amorius, son of Canaan, son of Ham, and the Philistines come from Caphtor, son of Mitzrayim, son of Ham. So the Amorites are mentioned like 85 times in Scripture, I think, and the Philistines are mentioned over 200 times. And there are giants in both of these groups. That the most famous one of the Philistines, of course, being Goliath and his brothers, and then of the Amorites, I mean, you got Arba, Anak, the Anakim, Sihon, and Og of Bashan. So they're Amorites. But these other groups are associated with the Amorites, the Canaanites from which the Amorites come, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites. These are all Canaanites. So they're Nephilim. All these Torah scholars out there are trying to say that Nephilim are just wealthy people or the elite or the lords of the these people are clueless, man. They have to the sheer volume of information, not only in the canonized text but also in the what I call the synchronized biblically endorsed extra biblical text, the sheer volume of information they have to ignore to hold to the exceptionally bogus Sethite view is nothing short of staggering. They must have to take a Sharpie to huge portions of Scripture to believe the nonsense that they believe.
I've never even been able to believe that. I'll be right back. I'm going to get a cup of coffee, guys. I'll be right back.
Rob, wouldn't you say we're still dealing with the Nephilim?
Yeah, I believe we still are.
Disembodied spirits, yeah.
Well, the disembodied spirits are demons, but in my opinion, they are only the disembodied spirits of the first generation Nephilim. The first generation and only generation Nephilim that were angel-human hybrids in Genesis chapter 6. When an angel mates with a woman, it's not the sons of Seth. The sons of God are the angels. Job tells you that Job predates Genesis. You got to understand the figures of speech in Genesis as they're used in the Old Testament. People try to use the New Testament to define the words in the Old Testament. No, the New Testament is to be understood in the light of the Old Testament, not the other way around. So Job sets the precedence of sons of God that were there at creation. So Seth and his sons were not there at creation. That's where it sets the stage. So I mean, you gotta go with that. What was your question? I just lost my train of thought.
Well, I'm just saying we're still dealing with these entities.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah. So clearly we're dealing with angels in Genesis 6. The entire unanimous ancient record is in the unanimous agreement prior to 160 AD. This bogus Sethite theory doesn't even show up to about 160 AD. So everybody else, Josephus, everybody else before that understood it was angels mating with women. So when you got an angel-human hybrid and you kill them, then you have a demon. Those evil wandering spirits go out and become demons. Animal-human hybrids, on the other hand, I have a question. I don't know. I know Enoch chapter 15 tells you point blank, angel-human hybrids, you kill them, you end up with demons. Can we make the same assumption with animal-human hybrids, which is what we're dealing with in the postal world, predominantly, in my opinion, or genetically modified humans, not having anything to do with angels? If you kill them, will a demon come out of them? I don't know. Some say yes. I don't think we have any textual precedence to be dogmatic about it. So I don't know. But one way or another, demons are still in existence, clearly. I mean, they're all over the New Testament. We see them having to deal with them. And you guys have had plenty of people on your show. I've had lots of people on my show. It's very real today with satanic ritual abuse and demonic possession and things like that. It's very real today, so we're still dealing with them. Absolutely, they're still around.
Okay, is there anywhere you want to go as far as the Torah portion? You want to get into more of the questions?
Well, let me go ahead and run the audio. I got to take a quick break. We got 3 minutes of Isaiah, so I'm going to play that because we're going to run out of time before I have to go. You guys can certainly continue after if you want to keep going. I'm just going to have to bug out because I got to get ready for tomorrow's early morning trip to Austin. But I'll go ahead and play Isaiah right now, and let's see what happens.
I am he who comforts you. Who are you that you are afraid of man who dies, of the Son of Man who is made like grass, and have forgotten the Lord your Maker, who stretched out the heavens and laid the foundations of the earth? And you fear continually all the day, because of the wrath of the oppressor, when he sets himself to destroy. And where is the wrath of the oppressor? He who is bowed down shall speedily be released. He shall not die and go down to the pit, neither shall his bread be lacking. I am the Lord your God, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar. The Lord of hosts is his name. And I have put my words in your mouth, and covered you in the shadow of my hand, establishing the heavens and laying the foundations of the earth, and saying to Zion, you are my people. Wake yourself. Wake yourself. Stand up, O Jerusalem, you who have drunk from the hand of the Lord the cup of his wrath, who have drunk to the dregs the bowl, the cup of staggering. There is none to guide her among all the sons she has borne. There is none to take her by the hand among all the sons she has brought up. These two things have happened to you. Who will console you? Devastation and destruction, famine and sword. Who will comfort you? Your sons have fainted. They lie at the head of every street like an antelope in a net. They are full of the wrath of the Lord, the rebuke of your God. Therefore hear this, you who are afflicted, who are drunk, but not with wine. Thus says your Lord, the Lord your God, who pleads the cause of his people. Behold, I have taken from your hand the cup of staggering. The bowl of my wrath you shall drink no more. And I will put it into the hand of your tormentors, who have said to you, bow down that we may pass over. And you have made your back like the ground, and like the street for them to pass over. Awake, awake, put on your strength, O Zion, put on your beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city, for there shall no more come into you the uncircumcised and the unclean. Shake yourself from the dust, and arise. Be seated, O Jerusalem. Loose the bonds from your neck, O captive daughter of Zion. For thus says the Lord, you were sold for nothing, and you shall be redeemed without money. For thus says the Lord God, my people went down at the first into Egypt to sojourn there, and the Assyrian oppressed them for nothing. Now therefore, what have I here, declares the Lord, seeing that my people are taken away for nothing? Their rulers wail, declares the Lord, and continually all the day my name is despised. Therefore my people shall know my name. Therefore in that day they shall know that it is I who speak. Here I am. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, who publishes peace, who brings good news of happiness, who publishes salvation, who says to Zion, Your God reigns. The voice of your watchmen, they lift up their voice, together they sing for joy, for eye to eye they see the return of the Lord to Zion. Break forth together into singing, you waste places of Jerusalem, for the Lord has comforted his people. He has redeemed Jerusalem. The Lord has bared his holy arm before the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our God. Depart, depart, go out from there, touch no unclean thing. Go out from the midst of her, purify yourselves, you who bear the vessels of the Lord. For you shall not go out in haste, and you shall not go in flight, for the Lord will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard.
Right on. Well, we can obviously see the parallels here about him going before them and fighting for them. So that's pretty obvious parallel for why they would have paired up that portion of Isaiah, the prophets, with the Torah portion. Something I want to point out here that's interesting, let me slide this over here, is where you see the word salvation in several places in Isaiah 52. It's Yeshua, right there. Yeshua. I love it when it talks about God, Yahuwah, being their salvation, because it's saying Yahuwah will be their Yeshua. And so right there is Yeshua right there, salvation. That's what his name means. So that's pretty cool. And also where it talks about the good news, that's good news. That's the word gospel. That's where we get the word gospel from. The gospel is the good news. So we have the gospel being preached in the book of Isaiah. So it's not a New Testament concept. And that's always something that has, especially since coming to Torah and beginning to understand these things in a different light, is if you talk to your typical Christian, just anybody at church, and say, hey, what is the gospel? Most of them will say something along the lines of, well, we're sinners, and Jesus came and he was perfect, and Jesus died and he was buried and he rose again, and we just have to accept him as our Savior. That's the gospel. Well, the gospel was being preached before all that happened. So if the gospel is being preached in Isaiah, blessed are those whose feet take the gospel, and John the Baptist is out there doing it, and Yeshua is preaching the good news before he died and was buried and resurrected, then that begs the question, what is the gospel?
Mm-hmm.
And it's something we don't have time to get into it right here. If you want to watch the video I did, Yahuwah Triangle Part 3 video, that's where I get into what I now understand to be the good news. And just to summarize it, it's basically that you who were divorced and have no way back to the Father, according to Deuteronomy chapter 24, the good news is God made a way. And while keeping his own law, he did not violate his law. There was a loophole that he worked into his own law that he revealed through, I believe, the Apostle Paul. Paul figured it out. If you read the book of Hosea and then read Romans 7 through 11 and Ephesians 2, you quickly realize Paul got it. Paul understood what's happening. And think about this. If you're married to God and he divorces you, and there's a law in the books that says if God divorces, or a man in general divorces his wife and she goes to be with another, if something happens with the other, the first husband can never take her back. Never. Well, the southern kingdom, Judah, was never divorced. Northern kingdom was divorced. So the southern kingdom, knowing that the northern kingdom was divorced, and they weren't exactly playing nice with each other anyway, they weren't friends, they had a members-only club with basically Judah and Benjamin, maybe some of the Levites, saying, sorry, you guys can't come back. You're done. You're divorced. So, if there is no chance that you can ever have that relationship, no matter what, you can never have that relationship with God again, that would be very bad news. That would really stink. That would be horrible. To be totally and forever separated from God with no chance of ever coming back, that's terrible news. Oh, but wait, there is good news. God has made a way through his salvation, through Yeshua, to take you back. That's exceptionally good news. That's beyond good news. That's fantastically awesome, incredible news right there. But that news was being preached by Isaiah, by Hosea, by others before Yeshua came, died, buried, resurrected.
And if you have troubles looking for that, go to his YouTube channel and find it. I'll post it on my Facebook page after the show, so you can just find it really quick. Just a reminder, Yahuwah Triangle Part 3. I'll post it on my Facebook page so you can find it pretty quick. Cool. And watch that. I've explained that to a lot of people since the Power League. When you and Doug came down there, and who we are in Messiah. And you get mixed reactions from churchianity. Sure, some are daggers, and some are going, I want to know more. So it helps to go back and read Hosea, Romans, all of those scriptures to see what he figured out. It's incredible.
Also, we had a show with Zachary Bauer, and he was traveling or something. He couldn't show up, and we did a show about that actually. And man, it was like so many people were just blessed by it that had no idea. And I'm surprised because that teaching, that kind of thing has been out for a while, but we did a show on it, and people, a lot of people had never heard it. I was really kind of impressed. I mean, it was pretty interesting. So it's definitely powerful.
I mean, the message has been out since Paul wrote Romans 7 through 11 and Ephesians 2, but we've missed it.
Yeah.
Due to Marcion and Constantine and a whole lot of others in between, Darby and whatnot, that message has been lost, but it's coming back. And that's what the way documentary talks about some of this stuff and what we're doing here. I mean, go figure. If you go back to the beginning, you'll figure out the answer. God declared the end from the beginning, so here we are in the end. And, well, the reason why everybody's starting to figure this stuff out is because they're going back to the beginning. And to go back to the beginning is to go back to Torah. And that's all the time I actually have for tonight. I'm going to have to book out. But you guys certainly welcome to continue without me if you want to do the New Testament ones or whatever, or see if you guys can field the questions with anybody else. I mean, that's up to you. But I'm going to have to boogie tonight.
I think we'll boogie as well, Rob, to get started on the Shabbat, laying back.
Before you guys go, Aaron, don't forget, we got your question. We'll ask it next week. If you can remember it, copy and paste it. We'll ask Rob next week. I know you asked a few times, so we'll get to that. And I've got a few questions myself. So.
Rob,
yeah, cool.
So yeah, I think you had a question as well. We didn't get to. So.
Yeah, well, talking amongst yourselves too. You guys certainly welcome to continue Shabbat, on social media.
Well, I think you're more qualified to answer a couple of these, though. I think this is your deal right here, man.
This is right up your line.
Oh, my alley. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, guys.
People won't be satisfied with our answers on this. They want Rob on this one, so it's cool. We'll ask it.
All right. Well, yeah, save your question. We'll try to get to it next week. And otherwise, well, thank you guys for hosting this once again, John and Shabbat Shalom, everybody.